It's Joe, Sharad, and Justin. We're here for Tuning Tuesday, episode 27. Primary focus is going to hopefully be suspension, but we'll see where the questions take us. Or suspension, but also the other stuff that UPR makes, like catch cans and motor mounts I see here. You want to introduce yourself, Sharad, for the people that don't know you?
Yeah, I'm Sharad from UPR. I'm the marketing guy, and most of my day is spent with marketing, social media, but I also do a lot of the tech help. So guys will private message, call, email with chassis setup questions, or hey, check out this video of my car. Can you give me some advice on adjustments? And that's part of the job too. So we help out any way that we can, whether it's calling the shop or sending us messages. We try to make sure everybody gets taken care of.
And you see him at every racetrack and every show that UPR goes to.
You usually see him under is it the blue tent that you guys have?
Yeah, usually selling, but you know what? Every now and then we'll go to the races and somebody will be like, please come to my pits. I'm having a problem with my car. I need you to check it out. And we'll go over there and make a quick adjustment. And one of the best parts of my job actually is when I get to see an adjustment that we've made for the customer or advise them on, and then they go out the next round and then the car picks up. It's gratifying to be able to see that. And we go to probably 20, 25 events a year, so we get to interact with the customers quite a bit, and I love that. That's my favorite part, is helping the customers go faster.
That's what I always see you doing, man. We're in a good share of those events, not quite as many as you, but
A couple. So where do you guys want to take this initially? You guys want to start off with some of the suspension, some of the...
I don't know this. I haven't been here in 2 weeks, so
okay.
It's
well, where have you been for the past 2 weeks? Let's cover that for all the people watching.
So 2 weeks ago, Rebecca and I were in Washington for the SEMA Washington rally, meeting with our legislators to talk to them about the RPM Act and get their support for that. And I know that's a little bit of a controversial subject for you, so we should discuss that a little later in the show.
Oh boy, yeah, and, I won't step on anybody's toes.
No, man, it's all good. I think it's a
feel
good conversation.
very strongly about us having the right to modify our cars. That's it.
Right.
I mean,
it's a good conversation to have.
Mm-hmm.
And then last week I was on vacation with Rebecca and the family in Paris, France. Eiffel Towers and croissants and bread and
Cheese,
yes. Fromagerie. There is a patisserie slash boulangerie and a fromagerie like on every corner. Well, actually, more often than every corner.
That's awesome.
When we got up in the morning, came out of our hotel, it was like, all right, are we going to get pastries from there or there?
Lactose intolerance nation.
But anyways, so that's where I've been. I'm glad to be back on the show, doing the regular thing.
Back on the straight and narrow. So I guess we'll start with something that I see you guys most often doing with cars is suspension stuff. What would you say is the most popular thing you guys sell for S197? The most popular thing you guys sell for S550?
Well, actually, it's really interesting, this mix of parts, because it's a pretty good representation. Best selling, probably these lower control arms with the polyurethane bushings. Honestly, the 05 and up cars are great cars. I mean, I'm a Fox body guy, but the chassis on the S197 is a big step up from the Fox bodies in terms of all around, just daily driving, acceleration, braking, cornering, all of that.
It's a lot more rigid for one.
Yeah, it is. I just feel like I read somewhere that an S197 is about as stiff as a Fox body with a cage, which is a pretty dramatic statement.
I had an SN95, which was not far off from a Fox body, and I completely believe that.
Yeah. So they did a great job with the chassis, but then in order to keep NVH in check, the control arms just had massive soft rubber bushings on the control arms, and that was really detrimental to the performance of the car. It made it quieter, but I mean, wheel hop like crazy when you launch, when you're cornering, the car feels vague. It's just really bad. I mean, to me, I hated that part of it. So anyway, one of the first things that we recommend for our customers is to upgrade the lower control arms. It's really easy. This is something that you could do in 30 minutes with hand tools in your driveway. It's not complicated, but
jack and a jack stand, pretty much, right?
Very, very simple to install. The biggest reasons that you get a performance benefit out of these, and these are chromoly, TIG welded, made in America. They're great control arms, but the performance improvement really is in the polyurethane bushing, specifically we use large outer diameter and large inner diameter bushings. So this 1-inch pin right here, that's unique to UPR control arms, and what it does is having the larger diameter keeps it from cutting into the bushing when you launch. So sometimes in some of these generic, like overseas control arms that you'll see, somebody will spit out a bushing, and what it is that this pin is so small, it's much easier for it to cut through the poly when you come off the clutch, or even an automatic car when you launch it, it beats up bushings badly. So that was a big.
And there's even different grades of polyurethanes. I've seen some of the American-made stuff still spit out polyurethane bushings.
They do, and we never have had that problem with ours. But yeah, I have seen. In fact, I was photographing a race 4 or 5 years ago at Bradenton, and I was kind of leaning over the wall, taking a shot of this car that launched. And right after it launched, something caught my eye, and I looked down, and there was a lower control arm polyurethane bushing that kicked out of the car and rolled over right in front of me on the wall. It was the craziest thing, and I thought, wow, I need to find that guy in the pits and tell him to buy UPR.
I mean, I had it happen to my 07 GT500, and the car literally steered itself getting on and off the gas. It was not fun, and I didn't know what it was at first, and
It's that thrust angle.
I finally found it. But yeah, I mean, having something that's gonna hold up. Now, how fast have you had people go on those polyurethane bushing control arms?
Okay, so we have had customers run in the 8s and a quarter mile on the full poly setup. That's polyurethane lowers and the polyurethane upper, just like this. And that's a completely street setup.
Right.
It's relatively quiet.
Right.
It's not crazy loud race car stuff. It's normal street person stuff. You use this upper control arm that's adjustable to adjust the pinion angle. Okay, but then this one is just stock length lower. Bolt them in there and you're good to go. It works really, really well, and it's reliable.
And then I see something a little more racy next to you.
Well, that's what we were talking about earlier. It's funny, the S197 now, when you think about it, 05, I mean, that chassis is 13 years old, so you've got people buying them, paying cash or paying very little money used and turning them into race cars. Well, if you've got this car and you want to go racing, you don't care about NVH, you don't care about a little bit of noise when you hit a bump. You just want to go fast, and that's it. So our race control arms with the Heims on each end, there's no, as the suspension articulates, there's no bind. It just moves really freely. It lets the suspension do its job. You know what I mean? So these work really, really well. And unfortunately, our fastest S197 guys are grudge guys, so I'm not going to say that they're running 6s in the quarter mile, but I'll say that we've had guys with S197s on these control arms running bottom 7s for years. They work really, really well, and don't have any troubles handling that kind of power.
And for people that don't know why you would need something double adjustable in the suspension, what would you say is the biggest benefit to having something that's double adjustable as compared to single adjustable?
Well, and I mean, honestly, I don't like to adjust the length of the lowers because the lowers are primarily for wheelbase, okay? And you're not generally changing that. Sometimes when you get into lower control arm relocation, there can be an issue where you want to make sure everything's square and you use the lower control arm to do that. But usually you adjust the pinion angle with the upper and leave the lowers at the stock length. Now, that being said, if you had a single adjustable lower and you wanted to adjust that, you'd have to unbolt one end of it. You unbolt one end, loosen the jam nut, make the adjustment, and bolt it back in. With a double adjustable like this, you loosen the 2 jam nuts, you put your wrench on this part of the arm to adjust it, and then once it's adjusted, you hold it in place there and tighten the jam nuts, and you're good to go. So it's very easy to work with as well.
Oh, damn. Now, if we're moving left to right here, ignoring the motor mount, this is a rear lower control arm, or a lower control arm relocation bracket for an S197?
Yes, sir. The way the control arm angles are from the factory on an S197, the lowers are really close to horizontal with the ground at stock ride height, okay? The vast majority of our customers want to lower their cars. And when you lower the car, let's say the car is going that way, you've got the lower control arm now at an angle downward toward the body of the car, and that's dramatically decreasing the anti-squat. That's the ability of the suspension to load the tire when you launch. So when you lose all that anti-squat, you're really losing traction. So with the lower control and relocation bracket, we allow you to sort of restore some of that anti-squat percentage back into the suspension geometry with these multiple holes here. This would be the stock height on lower control arm. You know, it's bolted to the rear axle. That's where the stock arm is. This is dropped down 1 hole, 2 and 3. I will point out that a lot of people like to get really aggressive with their anti-squat. They think a little bit of anti-squat's good, then a lot of anti-squat is better, right? And then the next thing you know, they've got them in the bottom holes. That's not always the case. I mean, you know, there is a bit of an art to tuning the suspension. And if you were to go too aggressive with anti-squat and not adjust the shocks correctly, what would happen is you come off the clutch or you come off the trans brake, the tire loads up really hard and then unloads. And these are the cars that you see hook for about 5 feet and then spin down the track. Is because they were so aggressive with the anti-squat that it actually hurt them.
And it's tough because if you don't have high-speed video or you don't know how to read the track, you're not even sure what happened. Because it happens.
Oh, damn track sucks.
That fast. Yes. And what the biggest thing we see people struggle with is, well, you know, out of those 10 passes, it hooked 1 time, so something's working. No, the track prep was good enough that it glued the tire down, but your suspension needs to push the tire into the track, not the other way around.
So yeah, that's the way the control and relocation brackets and the shocks work together. Really help to determine how much anti-squat you have in the car, and it can be a very effective tool when used properly.
Are we getting any questions coming in yet?
We've got a few in here. Brian Mockridge says, hey, how was Paris? And what do you recommend for shocks and springs for drag racing on an 03-04 Cobra IRS?
That's a good one.
Do you guys make anything for Cobra IRS?
Really just for the front. On the IRS, you know, there's a company called Full Tilt Boogie that makes, you know, the 99 to 03 Cobra upgrade pieces. And I'm sure they're still in business. I mean, there are a lot of those cars out there. I'm not familiar with that product. I mean, we have an 03 Cobra right now that we're building at the shop, and honestly, we're kind of teetering on whether or not we're going to keep it IRS or go with the straight axle. A lot of our customers go straight axle. So
I mean, we've had some customers race the 03 Cobra. You know, since we make a blower for the 03 Cobra, we've had them campaign the IRS pretty hard, and it can work for you, but it's a lot of money. It can be done. It's a lot of money though. But if you're going to end up going solid axle anyways, I don't know. Why just hasten that transition and only spend the money once? But you know, to your point, Full Tilt Boogie, I've heard of them before. Maximum Motorsports has done some stuff with the Cobra IRS.
And for a brief period, Drop Engineering made bushings for them. I think they got hit with some type of copyright or some type of patent infringement or something because they made them for a brief period and then they stopped very quickly.
Something that on that car, a slick is just going to make the IRS work pretty decently and solve a lot of problems. So,
and a bias ply slick for those that some people think a drag radial is a slick, so you want a bias ply like Mickey Thompson, Hoosier,
26, 27, stiff wall, slick.
you know, that's actually a really good point. I'm glad you brought that up because that advice really applies to a lot of the different platforms as well. If you have, you know, a sketchy surface, if you have a car that's prone to wheel hop, I mean, a bias ply slick, what it does is there's enough give in the sidewall that it can absorb a lot of the, you know, the violence of the hit of coming off the clutch or the trans brake. So Justin's absolutely right in bringing that up about the 03 Cobra, but we bring it up to our customers with even the newer cars. In fact, I was talking to my friend Tom Kundrick at Mickey Thompson this morning on the way here because we have a particular project car that we're working on that just needs to hook all the time, and it's a stick car. And he said, absolutely, the 28-10-5 stiff sidewall slick, that's the one you want to run. So for that application, it's good.
And you know, everybody loves a drag radial because you can run it on the street more easily. Still don't know how good of an idea that is, but the drag radial is technically faster when it's set up perfectly. I mean, the fastest UPR suspension cars are drag radial cars, right?
Yeah, they are. I mean, we, you know, we've been doing the drag radial game since it started. Many people have seen that our red 95 GTS and the BF Goodrich ad, I think that was in 2001, where we were going 8s with a street car on drag rails back then. And still today, you know, we've got guys going, well, I guess David Pearson running 410 at 175 in the 8th mile on a 275 radials is probably going to be our quickest guy.
That's pretty awesome. So the radial is an awesome tire. The slick has its place depending on what type of racing you're doing and what you need to accomplish and if it always has to hook and some other different conditions.
I'd say a slick's probably a good band-aid for a suspension that's not set up quite right. So if you're kind of in the beginning stages and you don't have a lot of money in the suspension, it's a manual car, throw a stiff wall, bi-sply tire on it.
It's going to make your life easier. You're going to break less stuff and you're going to go faster.
Yeah, absolutely.
You get more questions, Joe?
Yeah. Chad Dowd, he's one of our regulars. He's like, hey, what's up, guys? Ready to see what this UPR is all about. What is the typical weight savings from all stock suspension to the UPR K-member A-arms and coilovers on the S197 platform?
That's a great question. And for the record, Chad runs a slick.
Yeah, I think the K member is 20 pounds less on the S197 chassis. That's what he said, right?
Yes.
S197. Yeah. Haven't come out with the arms yet. Being honest with you, we were a little bit apprehensive in the beginning about doing the arms on the S197 because when we did it on the Fox body, it was a significant weight savings because the arm is designed to hold the coil spring inside of it, and that's not the case on the S197 chassis. So the performance benefit to doing an arm on an S197 really is mostly in the bushing. You can have less bind as the suspension articulates by having either poly, Delrin, or even a metal bushing on the arm versus the factory rubber bushings. But something we haven't done yet, like I said, the K-member I believe is 20, it might be 24 pounds lighter, but the biggest benefit honestly is more room to work around the engine also. I mean, having a tubular K-member on the front, you're getting starter bolts, header bolts, things like that. Everything's more accessible with a tubular K-member.
I couldn't imagine working on a car without a tubular K-member.
Yeah.
Do you have any options in terms of build material for K-member? Do you have K-member
So
like
the
chromoly and mild steel?
S197, yeah, on that car it's only chromoly,
Okay.
and it's American-made chromoly, and like I said, TIG welded in South Florida. On the 79 to 04 cars, we do offer a mild steel, and I believe that one's an 8-pound difference between mild steel and chromoly. So the chromoly kit is about 70 pounds less up front, and the mild steel is going to be more like 62 pounds lighter when you put it all together. But mild steel is a great option. It's just primarily we came out with that for people that wanted to save a little bit of money.
24.
All right. John Bailey wants to know, he just did an aluminum drive shaft on a stock 2011 GT. Wants to know, is his pinion angle off now, and how would he check that?
So with the only change being the drive shaft going from what I would assume to be a two-piece drive shaft to a single piece, have you guys seen going from a two-piece to a single piece change the driveline angle a lot?
No, you'd have to change the suspension to change the pinion angle. I honestly, I think there's a question behind the question, and what I'm guessing is sometimes a person will hear driveline noise, and their first thought will be, what's the pinion angle? Is there a problem somewhere? It's most likely if he's picked up a little bit of driveline noise when he did the drive shaft, it's because part of the reason why Ford went with the two-piece was that it's quieter. It's this big, heavy two-piece, and I think it had, like a soft bushing somewhere. It's really quiet, but it's just not good for performance. Every car that I've ever driven that did an aluminum drive shaft, it did pick up a little bit of noise, and that's part of it. I mean, it's a sacrifice that you make. We've run different brands of drive shafts in our cars, and I'm not going to say that one's better than another, but certainly all of them pick up a little bit of noise when you go to one piece.
All right. Colin Austin says, hell yeah, Sherrod in the house, titans of industry. Chad Epperson, will a lightweight UPR K-member work with a set of heavy BMR A-arms? Asking for a friend.
So, yeah, here's the funny story behind that one. Chad Epperson runs a great shop in Kentucky called London Chassis Dyno, and I really like Chad, and here's why. Going back to the titans of the industry comment, which is funny, but I'm gonna choose to take that as a compliment. I've been doing this for a really long time. I mean, I have a lot of experience in this, and then some people, kind of look to that as, well, Sherrod kind of knows what he's talking about, and I appreciate that. I mean, we're all learning, but over the years, decades that I've been doing this, I've met a few people that are really sharp. You have to be careful. In fact, I want to touch on this. Sometimes on the internet, people claim to be experts and they're not. And if you didn't know any better, you wouldn't know if they knew what they were talking about or not. Chad is a person who's been doing it for a long, long time, and because he's from Kentucky, and I think he gets a kick out of this, he kind of talks in his southern drawl and he acts like he doesn't know a lot. He's really, really smart, and he's built some of the fastest cars in the country. He really has. The BMR thing was just a joke from him because he's been telling me for years that we need to make a tubular A-arm to go with our tubular control arm for those cars. But, you know, hey, I'll be honest with you guys. We've got customers that run UPR members with BMR arms, and it works really well. I mean, they are interchangeable with the stock arms, so that's fine. But we'll come out with something for those guys really soon so that they can keep UPR from front to back in those cars.
All right. Josh writes in, he's got a 2014 GT. He's got full bolt-ons, VMP Gen 2R with a twin 65 and NA cams, stage 3. It made on pump gas, 640 wheel, 540 torque. Love the results, scary fast. Love the supercharger. Thanks a lot, VMP, and power by the hour.
Sweet.
Thank you.
Nice
Good to
shout
hear.
out.
Joey, our own Joey Camacho, writes in, BMR has a spring that they label as drag racing spring. What does UPR offer as a purpose drag spring on an S197 solid rear axle?
Okay, we do something a little bit different on those cars. Instead of having, you know, the stock spring is kind of shaped like an hourglass. It's got a small pigtail on top, and then it gets bigger, and it comes down, and then like this. What we do is we have a kit with an adjustable perch that gets welded directly to the axle housing, and then you use a conventional coilover type spring, okay? So more often than not, a customer with an S197 is going to buy that adjustable kit with a 10-inch long, 150-pound spring, and that's going to cover a lot of the people. 28-inch tire, they're going to raise it up a little bit. If they got a shorter tire, they're going to lower it down a little bit, but usually that's it. You got an air-to-water cooler in the back, a little stiffer spring. Multiple batteries in the back, stiffer spring, but generally 10-150.
And that's what we run on Rebecca's car. And we opted for a little bit lighter spring to give the shocks more control. But it's a product of trying to go 160 foots. So 150 pounds, good starting place for your average car.
Yeah, so usually that and coilovers in the front are what our dry guys are using.
Oh, yeah.
All right, Dorian Johnson, hey guys from New Jersey, see you guys at Carlisle on Saturday. Antonio Lee says, what is the max boost and timing you can run on a GT500 with meth?
That's
wanna touch that one?
That's a wide open question.
Stock motor probably.
Everything and nothing?
Yeah, I'd say it's accurate.
No, I mean to try to. So I like your statement. Question behind the question. So how could that car be set up? It probably has a medium-sized blower, a TBS, maybe a stock blower. It's probably running 15 pounds of boost. We'll just say it's middle of the road. I think did we talk about water meth on another one of the shows?
We have
Yeah.
a few times.
I mean, here's the thing: if the water meth ever fails, we don't want to make the tune so aggressive that the car then blows up.
And these aren't standalones that take a little flag from the ECU that says, hey, I have meth or I don't have meth. So if you stay in it and there's no flag that says, hey, pull timing out because there's no meth, you're in a bad situation.
No good way for us to have a safeguard in there if the methanol fails, other than you having some type of indicator light, flow indicator, and you then lift. So we don't tune real aggressively on meth. If you want to use it, sparingly, very, very sparingly. I think we had somebody on the dyno a couple weeks ago unplug their meth and made more power. Were you? That was at Shelby Fest, wasn't it?
I don't know. Was that when I was up in the room doing tunes up in the room?
Yeah.
Were you doing
I was tuning something.
Was it the Roush Hammer 3 valve that you did or something else?
It was one of those cars, but yeah. So yeah, too much. I mean, this is the way I explain to people. You want to put water on the fire? It puts the fire out. At least methanol burns. And if you're going to run it, I'd run straight M1. Get the 5-gallon pail from VP, and I'd use very little. And it may have its place in a road course situation, or if you can only get like 90 octane up in Alaska, or can only get 91. But not a huge fan. All these new intercooled setups, you know, all these factory supercharged cars are intercooled. I'd rather run like Torco, or we're going to check out this Boostain octane booster stuff. I'd rather run something like that than water meth, honestly.
So add your octane into the gas tank, not into a separate injection system into the engine?
Yeah, because you know the gas tank's not going to fail.
Yeah.
Not only that, but isn't there a difference between, putting your extra octane or your safeguard in at the, directly above the cylinder head versus running it all through the blower? I mean,
Yeah.
isn't there something about what you sprayed in?
The PD blower setups don't seem to benefit nearly as much from like a direct port injection octane setup. Like if you had a methanol nozzle in each intake port directly above the valves and whatnot, then it would probably work pretty good. But being that it's injected pre-supercharger, has to go through the intercooler, it wicks some heat away from the intercooler, which is great, but then it has to go down after it's been heated and cooled again, make a 180 and then make another 180, and it just doesn't seem to stay in the air charge throughout that process.
Yeah.
Well, I have done the deal that you said. I have used the octane booster. It's just like, let's say that the car is usually raced on race gas, but kind of want to drive it a little bit this weekend, and I don't feel like spending hundreds of dollars on, a can of fuel. And I've done the deal where just driving on the street at part throttle, I put some octane booster in there, and it's fine. I mean, I don't necessarily recommend that, but I think doing that compared to running the meth in front of the blower, that might be.
And all this is going to come down to what your tuner wants, what they're willing to tune for and not tune for. And I mean, a lot of the stuff, it's ease of use as well. We got to think about that too.
Oh, show.
Yeah, more questions?
Yep. Joe wants to say, hey, thanks, Justin, for nailing my tune. My car drives like stock now.
Nice.
Good to
I
hear,
assume
Joe.
that's
Thank you.
Joe Day.
Joe Day.
Joe Day?
Okay.
A gentleman named Grant wrote in, and this may be for Sharad. He says, tell me more about your big turbo Focus RS build you guys are doing on Vincent's RS.
I think
Nothing
that's
that
gotta
sounds
be you
familiar to
guys.
me.
Yeah, that's not something that I'm involved in.
That might be something that another department's involved in, because I'm not
Yeah.
aware of a big turbo
Me either.
Focus RS.
Yeah, we do
Sounds
have
like a fun
some,
ride.
We do have some turbo upgrades available to us, but
Okay.
yeah, we're not in on that project yet. I'm
All right.
sure calibrations will be soon, but
All right, Tony on YouTube wants to know, is there a way to make the select shift buttons on automatic Coyotes more responsive when you actually hit the button?
There's a timer in the ECU, but at the end of the day, it's kind of like a staging light. You can know that it's going to come on at a certain time and go sooner. So if you know that, hey, I want my shift to occur at 7,600 RPM, and you hit it at 74 and it occurs at 78, all right, maybe I need to hit the button at 72.
and that's how it works in Drive. The computer commands the shift before it wants it to happen. So it happens when it wants it to happen.
Yeah, and like I was saying, there's a timer in there for the amount of time after like shift selection that it occurs. I've never manipulated it, so I don't know
Yeah.
if it actually is a parameter that will actually do anything, as opposed to just like a definition of time parameter.
Yeah, I mean there's still a delay for the action to happen.
So just account for it sooner in your finger.
All right. Dakota says, man, now I really need to redo my suspension. So obviously getting through to some people out there. What parameters would you guys recommend logging in HP tuners in reference to the torque model and tracking down throttle closure?
Throttle closure, depends when he's getting throttle closure. Did he say at what point in time?
Did not.
I'd look at torque source, like driver demand limit source,
There's a lot of
ETC
sources.
torque source.
Yeah.
There's
You
you could probably log 5 different torque sources and eventually figure out which one's doing it. But in order to tell you which one to log, you really have to know when you're having an issue with throttle closure.
There's a lot of, as tuners, tuning a lot of different setups, there's a lot of different places to look to answer that question. I mean, the first one that comes to mind for me is MAF period limit.
Yeah.
But, zeroing that out at least pushes that out of the way. But it depends so much on the combination and what exactly you've got going on.
Justin Young says UPR for the win.
Yeah, we like Justin. He's a really good guy. We can't wait for the Mod Nationals this year to hang out, see some racing, sell some parts. And, I was supposed to race Justin last year in my street car, and it never happened. Now, this year, you just put a big blower on his car, right? And I don't know if I want any part of that. How much power did it make?
I made over 1,000 rear wheel.
Okay, I don't want to race Justin.
Can you borrow a car or something?
You tell me. Is Rebecca doing anything that weekend with her car? I'm just kidding.
And I think Justin will take it any way he can get it. He'll probably roll race you. It may not be a drag race.
Doesn't UPR have a red car that's pretty fast? I think I saw a post about that recently.
You know, let me tell you a little bit about our 2011, and then maybe I'll hint about a project that we have coming.
There are a couple other projects.
Yeah,
coming.
and that's what I was going to say. Our 2011, you know, we let me tell you, the short version is I had to rejuvenate our 2011 car because it was a 9-second car back in 2011 when it was brand new, but it wasn't the most reliable setup in the world, and it had a little bit of issues, so it was just sort of pushed to the side in our garage. And one day I was there at the shop, and I asked Mark, my boss, like, hey, let's do something with 2011. And he trusted me enough to let me do whatever I wanted to do. And of course, I called Justin up and I said, hey, we need to put a TBS on this thing badly. What can VMP offer us? So we did, I guess that would be a Gen 2, right? 2.3 TBS. And it has a stock lower with a 72 millimeter upper. And that car, we had a little bit of issue with our normal car that we race in NMRA Limited Street. And we wanted to go to all the races this year. So we said, how about if we take our 2011 car, which it fits the rules, right? Let's take an NMRA race it, just see what happens. So next thing you know, the car's going 950s just back to back like it's nothing. I mean, we're in the staging lanes, you know, just listening to music, you know, hanging out, leather interior and everything. Like it is a full weight street car, weighed 3870, went 953 at 146 with a 135 short time, and you could hop in that car and drive to California and back. It's that drivable, and that's the VMP. Yeah, I love that blower. Yeah. But I'll just drop this hint for Justin to get scared about going to the Mod Nationals. We may or may not have gotten our 2009 GT500 running again, and that car has an MPR racing engine in it, full suspension, exhaust, you name it. And well, we got a nice box sent down from VMP to bolt a Gen 3 on it. So that car might be able to sit next to Justin.
I wonder where that Gen 3 was going. That'll give Justin a run for his money because that thing's built. It's going to have a Gen 3 on it too. It'll be an interesting race.
Speaking of those two, I hope we can get Grant out to Mod Nationals.
Yes.
Because that'd be a nasty little car.
I mean, you know, and I kind of hinted at something here, but maybe Justin can tell us what's the story. You know, this is we roll racing at Mod Nationals. It's being talked about. I don't know for sure that it's happening, but for those high horsepower stick cars, it's a great way to get out and have fun without worrying about breaking all the parts on the starting line.
Oh man, yeah. Last year at the Mod Nationals, they had the stick class, and it was great to watch. I mean, I love a stick shift car, but there was a lot of breakage for sure. Right.
All right, Kenneth on YouTube says, "What's up, guys? I want to know what gear you would recommend for a 2018 auto car, NA, all bolt-ons. He has a 93 tune and a JLT. He has 315s in the rear now."
Ooh, Joe, I'm going to let you answer that one.
It really depends on what his goal is. If he wants all of it, I've seen really good results from 410s. I've not personally tried 410s, but I've seen a bunch of people try them and have really good results with it.
I mean, the stock 10-speed is pretty damn good.
It is.
It reduces the need for a rear-end gear. Because you've got, what, a 5.4 first gear?
I don't even remember the ratio offhand. I want to say it's like a 526, so I don't think it's quite that high.
It's insane.
Yeah.
It's a starting line ratio of over 15.
It might be 498. I'll have to go look now because it's going to bug me. I haven't looked at it in forever.
But that's a lot of, I mean, you go through on a quarter mile pass, you go through what, 5 or 6 gears on an 18?
5 gears.
5 gears.
Yep.
Hey, Grant chimed in. He said he will be there.
Awesome, Grant. Good to hear.
Yeah.
All right, Justin wants to know, Justin Muir, hey guys, do you happen to shut off rear O2 sensors in all your tunes? Just wondering if I can move to long tubes without needing a retune. Thanks.
That's not something that some people would call baked in.
No, don't want to bake that in because that's, not only is it against the law, it's going to cause people to not pass emissions tests in states that have emissions tests. And
unless you really go in there and fuck everything up. And then, we won't go there.
Sharad, Brian wants to know, what is the difference between a UPR catch can and a competitor's catch can like a JLT?
Well, you know, I actually had a heated discussion the other day online. A lot of times these conversations like this will come up and somebody will just tag me in and say, hey, answer that question. And what it was a guy found a catch can on eBay for like the cost of shipping. I mean, honestly, like I think it costs more to ship than what this guy found a catch can on eBay. And I'm like, you know, if you were to get that, and I've seen some pretty shady stuff like that, it would be just a can. Like imagine just taking your Pepsi can and putting a couple rubber hoses in it, and that's your catch can. I mean, if you want to get really technical, you could call that an expansion chamber. And then in theory, maybe going from a small diameter tube into an open chamber and then back out a small tube, that would help the oil vapor to coalesce. But let's be real, it's not doing anything. It's not doing anything, okay? A lot of our competitors' cans on the market, when you actually open them up and look at them, they're just a fitting going into an open can, or sometimes they get super innovative and they put steel wool in there, and then they have a fitting coming out the other side, and that's it. We have a 4-stage filtration system, okay? There are 4 different passages that the air goes through as it goes in the catch can and then out the other side. Some of it has, metal mesh in there. Some of it just has to do with the expansion chamber scenario. Some of it has to do with making a 180-degree bend when it hits the bottom of the can. These are all things that we put that oil vapor through to get the oil vapor to coalesce, make oil droplets that will then stay at the bottom. Putting the science and the techie jargon aside, here is the bottom line. You can take a UPR catch can and one of our competitors' catch cans and borrow one from a friend. I mean, they're easy to install, right? Run ours for 1,000 miles and run theirs for 1,000 miles. Or put ours in first and then theirs downstream of ours. Guarantee you, because we've done all these tests, okay? If you put a UPR catch can here and then a brand, XYJ catch can over here, and you say, if this one caught all the oil, there shouldn't be any in that one. Or vice versa. If you switch it around, if his can catches all the oil, then mine should be dry. But we've done all of those tests, and our catch cans simply catch more oil than the competitors. They just do. And that's because of years and years of R&D and testing that we've done to perfect our system. So, yeah, I'm sorry, the short answer to the question is a lot of our competitors are just an open can with fittings in it. Our can, a whole lot of CNC machined aluminum pieces inside, channels that the air goes through, all of that to make it catch the oil and let the air go through.
Voodoo magic.
Yeah.
Grant wants to know, why does VMP not offer a supercharger for the Lightning platform?
Is this Grant White?
Grant Rose.
Grant Rose, yeah, that's the one I'm thinking of. You want to answer that, Justin?
Yeah, I mean, here's why. Basically, a couple of different companies came out with basically mid plates to use a GT500 supercharger on the Lightning, and we've got a great line of GT500 superchargers. So get that adapter mid plate and run on one of our GT500 blowers.
All right, Gary says, hey UPR, I have your tubular rose jointed relocated lower control arms on my 800 horsepower 2011 GT500, and they work great with zero wheel hop, tight handling, etc. I live in the UK though, and the road surface down side streets is so bad that the rose joints ruin the ride, so I'm thinking of swapping to the UPR poly bush lower arms. Are they a straight swap over, or do I need to change the relocation brackets, and are they okay on an 800 horsepower street car?
It is a direct swap, no problems there. It'll definitely handle 800 horsepower, no problem, and we've had guys making over 1,000 on them, so that's not a problem. It'll be a lot quieter, definitely hold up really well, and frankly, it's such an easy swap that if you want to take the car to the track, maybe put the race arms in. But if I'm being honest with you, if you were to A/B test that car, 800 horsepower, 2011 at the track, run it on these, and then run it on the race arms right after that, I bet you there's not even 2 or 3 hundredths of a second difference in the 60-foot time. I mean, the polyurethane arms are that good. So.
Yeah, I don't think you can complain about the poly arms once they're on there.
All right, John Bailey says, I did a MagnaFlow Catted X on my 2011 GT. I want to bring it down to you to get a Gen 3. Will it kill my new cats? Can you do an install the week between Christmas and New Year's?
So if you're doing watt poles every now and then type of thing, you're probably not going to have an issue with cats. If you go out and you make the few 1,000-mile journey to Mexico and you go out and you do 6 back-to-back poles against Z06s, CTSVs, G8s, all that stuff, and the cats aren't happy with it, you're probably going to have a cat failure. The the biggest thing with aftermarket catalytic converters and a lot of boost or a lot of power is cool down time between poles for the catalytic converters. That's going to help increase the longevity of those cats.
I mean, there's just a lot of air mass going through them. Factory cats are the best for efficiency and durability from what we've seen. So it's hard to say what MagnaFlow, how good their cats are. I mean, I will tell you, the one anomaly to that is Jeff Lucina's car on the road course. We were talking about that. He's got basically a lot like my Boss 2011 GT with a blower. He's got some high flow cats from MRT, and they haven't failed on the road course. And of course, the tune still has cat protection turned on and everything. But
I wonder if he does a lot more engine braking.
that would cool the cats.
Yeah, because you're pushing a lot of air through it. Like if you're on like when we were in Sturgis with Track Attack, going down the mountains, I just left it in gear and let it go in a decel, and I could drop coolant temp 20 degrees going down a mountain.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
So, and to answer your question, get with us now, and we can try to schedule that over the holiday.
Chris M says, top-notch products from UPR. Justin Young chimed back in. He wants to know, what event is everybody going to in November, or what events? Event, my bad.
What's going on in November then? I don't know.
Well, Mod Nationals.
I was going to say, other than that,
thanks-
we're doing Mod Nationals.
Thanksgiving. That's an event, not a car event. I don't know if he's asking about car events. We got SEMA right at the beginning.
Oh, yeah. And then shortly thereafter, PRI.
Yeah.
I think that's December's.
World Cup's real popular out here on the East Coast, but man, hey, you and World Cup, that's it.
Yeah, that, and we got is all that stuff on the VMP calendar on the website?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. So yeah, if you want to see where we're going, you could just hop on the website and check out the VMP calendar.
There's a half-mile race 2 weeks before Thanksgiving in SEMA.
Okay.
And that's in October though, so that's outside
Is that
his
out
question.
at Jumbo Air? Okay.
Yeah.
Peyton Lucas wants to know, does UPR prefer mod motors or push rod motors?
Ooh.
You know, that's you have to understand that I'm older and married, so I'm the consummate gentleman at this point. But if you had asked me when I was 18, do I prefer blondes or brunettes or redheads, I probably would have said yes. And I don't do that stuff anymore. I've been married 16 years, but when it comes to cars, I think it's acceptable to say both, right? So if I could, I'd want to have both. Right now, I don't have a mod motor Mustang. I usually do. Right now, I don't. I am building a 347 for my Fox body. It's gonna be an MPR racing engine, trip flow heads. It's gonna be a lot of fun. But honestly, here's the thing. The Coyote is so good that if you already have a Coyote car, I mean, I can't see motor swapping. If you had a car with no engine at all, we could talk about, well, should you go push rod or should you go, I don't know, some people might want to go LS, but I'm saying if you have a car that's already Coyote, you just max that out. That platform is so good. I mean, I'm a fan of the mod motors. I just, I work on push rods myself.
I mean, the Coyote, grows with you. It's 400 rear wheel horsepower, almost 400 rear wheel horsepower NA out of the box, and then you can just you can add a little more, and you can add some more, and then you can build it when you're ready, and yeah.
It's a good platform at the end of the day.
Marcus wants to know, he's going to do cams in his 07 GT500 Super Snake with a Gen 1 TVS. He wants your opinion on what cams he should run and what's a good set of long tubes to go with that.
I'm going to say L&M NSRs or Kurgan NSRs. And then a good set of long tubes to run with that would either be Cook, Stainless Works, or Dynatech.
Yeah, I mean, the American-made exhaust, you can't really go wrong. And there's a lot of good cam choices that we carry that we've had good luck with.
Emerald Joy wants to know, does anybody know the gear ratios of the MT82 D4?
D4, so the fifth gear is no longer 1-to-1 like 11 to 14 was, but I believe aside from that, they're essentially the same for what we'll consider the 1 through 4 And then the fifth gear in 2018 is an overdrive ratio. So I think it's like an in-between ratio. So if it was like a 0.63 overdrive before, I think the fifth gear is like a 0.8 now.
So it's like a TR6060.
Kinda.
AKDNB, he had wrote in earlier in reference to the throttle closure issue. He's writing back in saying, you can kind of feel the car bobble. Transitioning from part to full throttle still needs to catch it in a log, but it's a 2012 V6 manual intake exhaust and the MAF is dialed in.
I mean, bobble, I wouldn't necessarily say that that's throttle closure so much as either your torque tables or the throttle data, depending on what throttle body's on it and what's done for power adder wise. But I know that we got, how many more questions do we got over there?
Just a couple.
Okay. I want to make sure that we throw in anything else you guys want to talk about UPR stuff before we get too close to the
We should
tail
hit
end
on
of
the
show.
S550s before we close, but I mean,
Okay. You want to hit those couple questions and we'll circle back to S550 suspension stuff?
Yeah. Gary wants to know, is there a complete UPR tubular front end kit for a 2011 5.4 GT500? So for example, a front K-member, radiator support, and bottom arms all in one package. I looked on your website a few weeks back and you couldn't find a complete kit. Thanks.
yeah, so, you know, we've tried to incorporate packages, but what we found is everybody wants to sort of personalize the package for themselves. You know, maybe they want the poly lowers in the back, but you know, metal upper or vice versa. So we try to sort of put everything in a one size fits all package, but it doesn't always work that way. We do have the tubular K member. We do have the, we actually call it a sway bar delete, but anyway, it's the radiator mount in the front that doesn't have the sway bar brackets. We have that as well, but not in a package that you could just click one button on our website and check out.
So it's a package if you a la carte it.
Yeah.
Once it's in
It
your
is a
cart,
package
there's your
if you select
package.
the parts of it. It is.
Daniel Lopez wants to know, what exactly do I need to run E85 on a stock S550, and do I need a new fuel filter?
Do those cars have fuel filters, Justin?
Not really.
They have
Not
a
one that he can change.
They have a filter in the hat and a sock on the bottom of the pump, but not a serviceable filter.
Non-serviceable.
And in terms of what you need to run E85 on a stock car, you just need a tune for E85. If you're going to run like a CJ manifold and you're going to want to turn 8,200 RPM or something crazy like that, throw a set of LU47s in it. But if it's just a basic manifold car, you're going to keep it mild around 7,500 RPM. The stock injectors are fine.
All right, Jeff wants to know, if stock ride height is obtained, would you bother with lower control arm relocation brackets? Drag racing duty here.
Okay, that's something I forgot to mention earlier. I'm glad you brought that up. So we go to the races a lot, like I said. And, you know, one of the things that I've seen over the years is that you might ask 10 people that you would consider an expert, that I would consider an expert, how should this be done? And get 10 different answers. And the truth of it is, oftentimes those 10 people have cars that they tuned and set up that are fast using their philosophy of how to make the car work. Okay? That being said, when I tell you my opinion, I'm admitting that it's my opinion, and it's not this is right and everybody else is wrong. Our car, our 2011 5.0 that I talked about earlier, goes 135 short times with the VMP Gen 2, and that's just foot braking off of idle on street tires, on regular, you know, dot radials. It works really, really well. That car does not have relocation brackets on it. One thing that I will tell you is that when we launch, the car squats, and I really don't like that. Okay, if I had my way on that car, I probably, even at stock height, I probably would add the relocation brackets and move the arm to the top hole of the relocation bracket. But what I'm telling you is that it didn't hurt to not have that relo bracket on our car at stock height. So I guess the answer to my question is, your question is, you don't need it, but recommended at the top hole.
And I mean, the tire and the track is good enough to hold it. But yeah, it'd be nice to see a little separation.
Okay, Brandon wants to know, he's got two identical supercharged 2015 Mustangs. Only upgrades are pump booster, injectors, and a tune. One is E85, the other is 93. What would be the horsepower difference? He knows the E85 can handle more boost, but the fuel pump would have problems supplying that much fuel. Just wondering.
So it depends on how much timing the car is tolerating on 93 versus what you're willing to put it at on E85. So a round number for timing on a 2015, 2017 S550, we'll call it anywhere from 17 to 21 degrees, depending on how happy the knock sensor is, how much timing the tuner's allowing the car to add in on its own, and how much an octane adjustment is offsetting everything. But let's say you're at that 17 degrees of timing, making 580 to 600 wheel, and you go to E85, and now you can run 22, 23 without really having any issues doing that. You can be 670 to 700 wheel, depending on the setup, altitude, dyno conditions, all that stuff. So you can be 100 horsepower, but then if you're 93 octane and it's really sweet fuel, the tune's really happy, it's at 20, 21 degrees, and you go to E85 still going to run that 22, 23 degrees, you may only gain 40, 50 horsepower going to E85. So it's one of those things where it's really case dependent, octane dependent, and tune dependent on how much power you're going to gain going from 93 to E85.
All right, guys, this is the last question. Robbie with a 2016 F-150, and you both have experience with this. Roush Supercharger, what exhaust setup is recommended? Is the stock exhaust choking the flow and robbing horsepower?
Yes, the stock muffler costs about 20 rear wheel horsepower.
Oh man. I have, for what it's worth, you have a Cook's exhaust catted on your truck. I know that you had the Roush catback, and with the headers you had to add a little bit more from a muffler standpoint to get the tone where you wanted it. But I think that truck sounds pretty good now. And my truck is a MBRP catback and stock manifold, stock cat, and I think that sounds pretty good. So that's two different exhaust setups-ish that you could run. That sound pretty good.
We're good.
Yeah.
So we talked a little about S197 and like the control arms being the go-to. What's the go-to on an S550 suspension-wise? Like, what are the first critical upgrades you should do if you're going to race your S550?
Well, so there is a lot of unwanted movement in the IRS on the 2015 and up. Those cars, kind of like you alluded to earlier, you put a slick on one of those cars and they can go fast. You know. Now, the difference between a properly set up one that's fast versus all stock that's fast on a slick is that you're doing a lot more driving on the not properly set up one to go from A to B than you are on a well set up car. Vertical links, toe links, camber arms, bushings, adjustable shocks. I mean, that's pretty much our recipe. Somebody has a 2015 and up Mustang, that's what we're going to have them do. One of the biggest things that I've seen people get wrong is camber on the IRS. I can't tell you how many times that I've been at the track and ended up laying underneath somebody's car adjusting their camber, because it seems like a lot of these people want to go lower than stock, and even stock really for drag racing they have too much negative camber. But then when they're lowered, the rear tires are like this. I mean, it's great that you put radial pros on the car, but there's only 4 inches of them touching the ground. So meanwhile, I'm wearing a work uniform. I'm laying on the ground, adjusting this guy's camber, and then the next thing you know, the car goes. This is a true example. At Mod Nationals 2 years ago, one of my friends' car went 1 second, a full second quicker in the quarter mile after we dialed in his camber at the track, because it was a car that made way too much power and he had to be really, really easy on the boost coming out of the hole, and he could actually get after it harder leaving once we zeroed out the camber so that he had the whole tire on the ground. So I think that so many people jump to vertical links and toe links, which do make a good improvement on those cars, but then they still leave so much negative camber that the tires are like this and they don't hook. So camber is greatly overlooked on those. UPR's adjustable camber arms, they're made of 70-75 aluminum. That's it's a little bit harder than the 60-61. We hard coat anodize it so that it doesn't oxidize or anything. They're really good arms. I recommend those both for the straight line guy that needs zero camber or the handling guy that needs some negative camber. But one thing that we started messing around with a little bit with our cars the other day, it kind of started with a video that I made in my 2016. Did this burnout video of my car, and I was watching it in slow motion, and I had all of our suspension on it, and when I came off the clutch, the wheels moved forward in the wheel well. I mean, a lot, like a noticeable amount. I'm like, hold on a minute, I've got everything you can buy for this Okay, and then I realized I don't have bushing upgrades yet. Okay, on the lower arm. So we are actually in the process. I should have asked my boss before I came over here. They might be ready now, but if not, we'll be ready really soon. The spherical bearings for the lower arms, and that right there takes a lot of the slop of the wheel moving forward in the wheel well when you come off the clutch, or
Like
nail
transition
movement on
shifts
that.
and gears on tracks and whatnot.
Makes a really big difference in those cars. So get the camber right. Take out all the slop that you can by upgrading to UPR vertical links, toe links, adjustable shocks. Big improvement with the double adjustable shocks. Those cars will want to wheel out. Well, if you got a double adjustable shock, you can control the compression and rebound damping. So it makes a big improvement on those cars.
So I have not personally aligned an S550 yet, because right when I started working here, a couple years before S550s ever came out. Previous to that, I did alignments for 5.5 years. The camber arms and the toe links on those, do you see a big change in toe and thrust angle when adjusting camber on those? Because I know that on a lot of cars, adjusting camber influences toe on an IRS.
And I'm going just straight off of memory, so don't get mad at me when I say this. I think it's a hair toe out. I think it's that when you fix the camber issues, you end up with a hair toe out, and you'll feel a little bit of squirreliness in the steering wheel when you're driving like normally taking corners. So definitely, I absolutely recommend, and I've been at the track zeroing out people's cambers, but then take it to an alignment shop and have your toe set. Because having excessive toe in or toe out is going to be an issue for straight line and cornering. So
And
yes, it does affect it a little bit.
Real quick, if you let's say you have a total toe of like 0.4 degrees, you can wear out a set of rear tires in like 3,000 miles if your toe's not set right. As opposed to camber, you can have one side minus 2 degrees of camber, the other side 0, and as long as toe's straight, it'll wear good.
Yep, that's true.
So I just wanted to clarify there that if you are going to adjust camber, that the camber does have a small influence or a decent influence on toe in, toe out. So make sure that if you're going to adjust that, find an alignment shop that knows what they're doing. Have them set it at like 0 to 0.5 negative toe, or not negative toe, negative camber.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say too, is I always tell my customers when they talk to me about this, you have to find an alignment shop that's going to work with you, because if you take your car there, and I don't care if it's $200 or whatever it's going to be, if they insist on doing factory specs, find another shop. You need a shop that's going to adjust it to what you request, okay? And then in this case, yes, I think that it's around, the factory camber I think is around 1 degree negative for a standard car, and I think it's more like a 1.5 degree negative for the performance pack cars. And I like it to be between, say, 0 and 0.5 degree of negative camber to start off with, because those cars really do move a lot when you launch.
Okay.
And not only does the alignment shop have to want to do what you request, but they have to want to spend the time adjusting it to get it within a decent range, because some of those factory alignment specs are like, from here to here.
Yeah, like you can have a spec that's 0.5 degree negative all the way to 1.75 degrees negative. And a lot of those shops will set it to where as long as cross camber and total toe are good, all right, ride out. So if you can be 0.5 degree cross camber, which wouldn't be ideal from a racing standpoint, but would be fine for an everyday driver. So you want to make sure that the shop that you're working with knows, hey, this is a race car. I want my car to be set up very even or biased in a smart direction,
Right.
like
For performance, right?
And when I used to do like racing style alignments for like spec Miatas and stuff like that, I'd always like to have a driver in the car or a similar weight to what they're going to be running when they're at the track in the car, so that the alignment is more so like people will say like a street tune versus a dyno tune. Like if you can get a car great on the street, chances are it's fucking perfect. If you can get a car great on the dyno, it's probably going to be 90% of what it needs to be on the street, but sometimes there's some small tweaks that need to be made depending on whether or not how you're tuning the car on the dyno.
I actually want to touch on that, because you make an excellent point. A friend of mine taught me, gosh, this is almost over 15 years ago now, that for their race cars, and this is a straight up race car now that we're talking about, they actually, when they set up their alignment, all the adjustments that they're setting up, they do it with, using jacks to simulate the position of the car, like the stance of the car, under acceleration. So in other words, you might have the camber specs exactly how you want it to be, sitting stationary on a rack, but then when you look at the car launch, the rear end's squatted over here, or the front's extended, or whatever, and all of those settings you put in are completely different going down the entire track.
Yeah.
So a lot of times racers will set the alignment not just for the weight of the driver, but also even in the terms of drag racing,
conditions
with
the car's gonna
front.
be under
Yeah,
when it matters.
exactly. And
So
that makes a difference.
if a car carries the front end 2 inches higher all the way down the track than it is when it's
Set the
on
alignment
the on the alignment rack, then set it up accordingly.
Yep.
Race car stuff.
Yeah. You guys want to take a couple more?
Yeah.
Okay. Jeff wants to know, on his 275 Radial Pros, does his mid 1.5 60-foot time sound decent in conjunction with his 10.5 at 130 time slip, or do I need to look at hooking much harder? This is foot braking a stalled 2011 supercharged car.
I'd say, to me, there's not really an easy answer to that. Of like, is my car doing good? It's not doing bad at a 1.5 60 foot with an automatic foot braking.
Yeah, it's
but
not doing bad.
could it do better? Hell yeah. But
Yeah.
I don't know where specifically you would need to go to get that better because I don't know exactly what the car is doing when it launches.
I mean, you could see a tenth just from a hot day to a cold day where it's making more torque.
Did he say it was centrifugal or positive displacement? Because one thing that I wanted to point out is we sometimes when we get that question from a customer, we have to ask them about power delivery. So in other words, you couldn't just vaguely answer, oh yeah, 1.5 it should be quicker than that. I mean, like I mentioned our car earlier with the VMP Gen 2 going 135 short with the with the 6R80 with the 275s. The fact is, and I'm not just trying to make these guys feel better, VMP blowers just work off the line. They just do, So you don't have to put a crazy ring and pinion in there. You don't have to put a crazy converter in there. They work really well with a stock converter or a stock gear. So there are a lot of variables that can affect what the 60-foot time should be given the amount of power and weight of the car. But I will say that VMP blowers do 60-foot well compared to some of their competitors because of how well they work on the line. But generally speaking, a 1.5 short time on a 10.5 at 130, I would say you've got a little bit of room there for improvement.
All right, Robert Rhodes wants to know, for 0304 Terminator, which MMR short block is best for helping him reach his goal of 1,000 wheel horsepower on a Gen 3, a 5.0 or a 5.4? He's currently making 820 horsepower and 757 torque with mods on a Gen 2.
So that's very confusing.
Is that the wheels?
That's what I said.
That guy's got his shit together. He doesn't need our advice.
Yeah, it's like you got a really kick-ass set of cams in there and all of the octane.
Yeah, if you're making 800 rear wheel on a 4.6 with a Gen 2 on a Cobra. Yeah, I mean, that question is probably beyond what we could answer on this show.
Yeah.
That's like a full-on race build if you're talking 1,000 horsepower.
I didn't even know that MMR made a 5.4 4.6 replacement short block. I only thought the biggest there was a 5.3.
There's all kinds of weird, there's weird stuff going on with Coyote cranks, and then there's the Ford Racing Boss blocks, and...
But you made a good point earlier when you said, we were talking about meth injection, I think, and you said, it depends on what your tuner likes, okay? That was how you answered that, which is actually really, really good advice. And similarly, in response to this question, I would say, you're asking which MMR short block to run. I mean, I talked to Mark Luton, occasionally, really good guy, very approachable. He's the person to ask. You ask your engine builder. And that's not, diverting the question. That's saying that he's going to have a recipe that he likes for doing what you want to do, and you want to stick with that. If he's your guy, go with him, and he'll steer you the right way.
There's a lot of different factors here. I mean, we provide the air pump, and, and we
The
provide...
air pump for your air pump.
Yeah, the compressor for your air pump, and we can provide the tuning as well, but we can offer a lot of recommendations and what we want to see, but we're gonna need to know. Your engine builder is going to tell you, what the RPM range of that setup and those cams are, and there's a lot of pieces of the puzzle to go together for everything to work well.
That, and I feel like not referencing MMR, but other engine builders that I see, some of the, we'll call it backwoods engine builders, tend to recommend very low compression for supercharged engines without factoring in octane. Like I'll see some engine builders recommend a 8.5 to 1 build for a car that's only ever going to see E85, and it's like, what are you doing?
So octane or compression ratio is free horsepower. The higher the compression, the better. But yeah, I mean, I see the same thing. Some engine builders love low compression ratios because the engine lasts forever. It just doesn't make any power. That's a whole other balancing act. But the Coyote's 11-to-1 compression is pretty good for a lot of applications. And in the case of an 03 Cobra, 9.7, 10-to-1 is good for a lot of general applications, I feel like.
Yeah, as long as you're not going to be running 93 on a consistent basis.
Yeah, I mean, anybody that's trying to make good power needs to be on like E85.
Yeah, or race gas. Just party.
All right, Gustavo wants to know, he's got full exhaust with a stage 2 kit, twin 60 and an 82 millimeter pulley. What kind of gains will he see if he upgrades to a 79 millimeter and a twin 67?
30 horsepower-ish.
Yeah, I'd say 30 to 40 if there's enough octane available.
Yeah.
All right, guys, we're all caught up.
Okay.
Well,
What are we working with time-wise here?
I think we're overtime.
Yeah, we're 240.
Oh, man.
240. Well, thanks for tuning in today. Like us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, make suggestions as to what you'd like us to talk about, who you'd like us to have on the show.
Shout out to UPR for
Thank you.
joining us, and Sherrod.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. I mean, you have a lot of respect for the empire, the VMP empire that Justin and Rebecca have built. It's really, if you're anywhere near Central Florida, you need to come visit the facility. It's amazing, and just a really good group of people that work here, putting out an awesome product. I mean, I'm
you.
honored that you had me on your show, and I appreciate your time.
Hey, we're honored to have you here.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for coming on.
Yeah.
We'll see you next time.
Have fun, guys.